Welcome to another episode of The Financially Free Investor, where you will learn information and strategies on how to become financially independent by investing in real estate, something that is not taught openly in our society today. Financial freedom matters so you can live a bigger life, retire early, and do what matters most to you. Get ready to hear tried and true methods to becoming financially free with your host, Jordy Clark.
What's the one thing you'd tell someone who's working towards financial freedom?
And I'll just throw this out there. This is something that I talk about all the time, and it's a simple conversation, but what do you really want? Why do you want it? What are you going to do to get it? Measure results, adjust. The thing that I would tell them, and that first question is a values question. What do you really want? Before you're working toward financial freedom is this thing that is obscure. So I can't tell you how many people I talk to that are already have the potential to be financially free based on the things that they want in life, but they're believing a different version or a different reality. And we have to be really careful with this. And Kiyosaki actually helped me, reframe this. I've listened to Kiyosaki a lot. I've been with him, quite a few times. And when you think through this, what I'm really saying here is I was having a conversation. I'll give you an example. I was having a conversation with a lady a while back, and she was from the town that I came from. And she's asking me this question. She's like, "Hey, can we get on a call? I've been following you for a while. And I really just want to be able to exit my husband from his job. He's miserable." I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So we get on a call, and as I'm talking to her, I'm like, "Okay, what do you guys really want?" She's like, "Well, I'd really just love to live in a different state. I won't say what it is. I don't want people putting the pieces together, but she's like, we just want to live in this other state." And I'm like, "Okay, well, what would that take?" And she said, "Well, in order to replace my husband's income, because I don't know what he would do there, I think he made $85,000 a year." And I'm like, "Okay, great. So could he not make $85,000 a year there?" And she's like, "Well, no, because he does this certain thing that he wouldn't make as much money if he moved there." I'm like, "Okay, fine." So as we start talking through it, I'm like, "What do you guys like? Do you have investments? Like, how much money do you make?" And she's like, "I make," and I don't remember exactly what the number was. She makes like $50,000 a year. And then as we started talking about it, they have 2 rental properties. They each combined, like together, they had like $700,000 of equity in their rental properties. And by the way, this is like 2 years ago. So who knows what these are worth today. And in their personal residence, which is their third home, their first, but then they own 2 investment properties, they had like another, I don't know, $400,000 in equity or something. So these guys are basically millionaires on paper, millionaires with equity. And she's just trying to figure out, because we've been sold this bill of goods about, go to school, go to college, get a good job, work till you're 65 years old. And then we can retire when we're fat and can't move. And who knows what the world's even going to look like then. What a horrible, horrible life. And so I reframed it for her. And I said, "Well, what if you guys sold those? Or what if you pulled the equity? Like, could you not even just pull enough to maybe, have a year to live on? What's your expenses?" And their expenses were less than like 70,000. I'm like, "What if you just pulled enough equity out of one of them to live for a year and a half, for 2 years, until you move to your dream location and your husband found a job?" She's like, "Oh, I never thought about that." So to answer your question, what's the one thing that that's not just one thing, but what's the one thing I would tell somebody on their journey to financial freedom? Just make sure you're really clear on what it is you actually want, because all they wanted was him to go get another job and to move to this other town. And guess what? I pointed out how they really had the means to be able to do it right in front of them. And guess where they're still living? Same place. So when you're on your journey to financial freedom, make sure that you know why it is that you want what you want and what you're really working toward, because obviously what she said they actually wanted either wasn't compelling enough, or they weren't experienced enough, or they had too much fear around it to actually get it done. There's so many people that probably have the ability to live their life of freedom earlier than they think they do. They just don't know it yet, because we're thinking this game, 60 years down the road, or whatever the number is. And I think it's much simpler. Like, what do you want your life to look like today? And what's it going to require to get there?
What's one thing that you'd want to tell someone who's maybe working towards financial freedom?
I think you have to, there's so many things. Financial freedom. Well, there's 2 things. Financial freedom can sound big. It can sound heavy. right? It's like, oh my God, I make X, especially if you're a high earning W-2 type person, right? I make 200 grand a year. I got to replace 200 grand a year. I would tell you to make that feel a little bit less, maybe uh, heavy. One, I would pivot first to lifestyle freedom. And what I mean by that is financial freedom will come faster. Anything will come faster when you are in a great place, when you are aligned. The universe is aligned with what you're trying to do, right? So if you're looking at life as, okay, I've got to grind out with what I'm doing right now and get to 200,000 in passive income before I can quit, go for it. You can do it. Absolutely. You can do it in any timeline that you want to, but that might feel heavy for a lot of people. So what I would say is, can you design what do you want financial freedom for? Like, what's the why? Why do you want to be financially free? What does that look like? What's that vision? We teach this in Emerge, which we'll talk about, but what's the vision of your life? And it could be anything from, I want to travel, to I want to live 6 months a year in warm weather and 6 months in cold. We're talking about it snowing in April here, right? Like, I want to do that. Or I want to own a plane. I want to own my own jet, whatever it is you envision your life to be. Start designing your life now for that. And that could be, maybe you change jobs in the meantime, right? Maybe you make a little bit less or the same amount, but you do a job that gives you flexibility like you don't have right now with your current job. Maybe you even take a step back. I've advocated this. Like, people get lost in their title. They're holding on to it like, but no, I'm important because I'm this. But there might be a job a step down and over that is like perfect for you. Who you are, what you do, all of that stuff. And being in that job will make you feel filled up. It'll fill your cup. And that will get you closer to the financial freedom you desire just by being in alignment with your authenticity. So I would tell people, have the vision of what financial freedom does and try to design your life today for that as best you possibly can, whatever that is. It is doable. Absolutely. The second thing I would say is the decisions that you make along the way to financial freedom. For me, they were always sort of laced with a sense of like regret. Like, man, if I could tell my 22-year-old self, man, if I could just go back and tell 20-year-old me, because how simple was life then, right? As a 40-year-old guy, I got 2 kids, a wife who'd stay at home, a mortgage. It's too complex now. But if I could go back to 20-year-old me, but you can't. However, if you look forward at these points where you're getting wobbly, at these points where you're saying, man, I don't know if I'm capable of this. I don't know if I should be doing this. Am I taking too big a risk? Why am I even taking these risks to become financially free? And you look forward to the person that only you knows, which is an 80 or 90 or 95-year-old version of you, or the 95-year-old version of you, and ask that person what you should do, or ask that person their advice. They would say to you, just like you would to your 22-year-old self, man, your life is simple. What do you have? You have a wife, couple kids at home, a mortgage. Who cares, man? Like, I'm about to die. My life is over. That's complex. That's hard. I get one little 90-year-old stint in the millions and billions of years of existence to do what I do, and I'm at the end of it. And so I never saw my 90-year-old self saying to me when I got wobbly and I was thinking like, oh my God, I'm throwing away this job that makes a few $100 grand a year plus equity. I never, ever could feel my 90-year-old self going, hey man, look, I wish that you would have just grinded it out, 40-year-old Jamie, at that job and stayed unhappy. Like we talked about. Yeah, you could have liked it, but you would have been okay. It would have been a nice, normal, easy existence, and you retire at 60 or 65. I wish you would have done that. I just can't picture 90-year-old me saying that. But for sure, I could hear him saying, dude, go. You're 40. Go do what makes you feel great, makes us feel great, right? Like, live into what you think your true purpose is. I guarantee you're going to be way more fulfilled at the point that you reach me, which is hear me now at 95 years old, about to die. If you do that, there was no scenario where I could hear 95-year-old me telling me to play it safe, stay small, tuck and run, stay in a like position, and don't try to like let your light shine, if that makes sense. So those are 2 things I would say is, I would aim toward lifestyle freedom. Know what your vision is. Aim toward that now. You can achieve that way sooner than you think. And when you do that, man, the financial freedom comes with it much, much faster because your energy is aligned. And second, when you're getting a little bit like, is this the right thing or whatever, just ask 90-year-old you what you should do. And I guarantee you'll have the answer.
What's one thing that you'd want to tell someone who is working towards financial freedom?
Yeah. So I think, definitely lean into it, right? Be ready to get criticized if this is a new thing for you. Like your friends aren't going to get it, your family's not going to get it. And so all the people that you know and love who've given you advice your whole life are going to tell you to play it safe and to don't invest and to don't do it this way, but do it the way they did it. Right. And so I was getting a lot of that, but I just kept going back to myself and thinking like, mom, dad, grandpa, I love you guys, but I don't want my life to be like yours, right? I don't want to work until I'm 60. I don't want that. And so why would I take career advice from someone who's doing something that I don't want to do? And so look at the people who are doing what you want to do and take their advice would be step number one. And then two, just like, don't be afraid to take action. Just get started early because you'll be happier the earlier you get started.
What is the one thing that you would want to tell someone who is working towards financial freedom?
So last week I was sitting there and I was like, I just thought like, why did it take so long for me to understand like the passive and the residual opportunities there? I thought for so long that you had to work, like there was proof, you had to show like sweat, right? Clock in, clock out, like do all that, and show like a proof of work in order to like, it should mirror, like this is how much you work, this is how much you make, right? Like that's what it was. And I think it was probably like a pride thing and obviously a limited mindset thing. But I thought the other day, I go, all these things that I'm doing right now, like I'm now the COO of an app that we're trying to launch here in Las Vegas, or it's actually launched, but we're pitching it to investors and things like that. But that opportunity came to me because I wasn't out selling homes, just stuck to that. I had residual going on and I started doing things that were fun for me, which was going out and interviewing local business owners, doing TikTok videos or full hour-long interviews, podcasting interviews on location. And people started noticing that. And like around and around a way, this guy reached out to me and he's like, hey, I need you to work with me. And so that's not possible with me just going home to home to home to home over and over and over again. And that's, so what I thought about last week is like, how does this opportunity get to you? And then I kind of broke it down, like reverse engineer all the way. Yeah, well, it's because you're doing videos. Why are you doing videos? Well, because, you want it to be, part of the community, going back to me growing up in a small town. And then as I got back to it, it came down to something very simple. I didn't have to go to do like regular work, if that makes sense. I was able to, I had time freedom to go do some things that were cool for me. And that turned into another business opportunity that I wasn't even searching for it. And I've had, other people contact me that want to work together because of those same videos. And this isn't a pitch to like go do a bunch of video, which I think is awesome. But I got a chance back to, talking about as we're children and what we want to teach our children. Like I tell my kids, I'm like, what do you want to do? Like, it doesn't have to exist yet. YouTube, like there's people making millions of dollars on YouTube that did not exist when I was growing up. Like no one was saying I want to be a YouTube star. But now I see the more like with residual, the faster you can get to that point, the faster you can start doing things that you really want to do. And that's what that's what I would recommend for somebody.
What is one thing you would tell somebody who's working towards financial freedom?
Man, like it's not really one thing. It's kind of like, here's like the proven framework. If you focus on these few things, and this is just what we really like to preach and talk about in the active duty passive income community and in our masterminds and stuff. It's really like 3 to even 4 different things. Number one, educate yourself and learn. You have to develop expertise in something. And for me, I kind of like, went horizontal. I learned a little bit about each different asset class and strategy for the intention of choosing one, right? Because you can't become an expert at flipping and wholesaling and burring single family and commercial and mobile home parks and off, like over time, maybe like if you do have, and you have the right connections and stuff like that. But when you're first getting started, choose one specific strategy, asset class, develop expertise and mastery in that one and go really vertical down that one. While you're doing that, network and surround yourself with other people who are doing the same thing, who have achieved the goals that you're looking to achieve and who are willing to kind of like reach down and pull you up to their level and potentially partner with you and show you and mentor you. So learn and network, right? And don't be afraid to be the dumbest person in the room. Like that means you're in the right room, right? Just be in that room and surround yourself with people who are like-minded and like-hearted. And that's why the ADPI masterminds are so special, because it's a niche specifically of military-minded investors who are all going after the same asset classes. So learn as much as you can, develop expertise in that one asset class or strategy, network your butt off, and just surround yourself with people, share your goals, share with what you have going on, but be more interested in what they all have going on. Have a genuine interest and genuine curiosity about what they have going on and their goals. That's how you find partners. And then, the next is figure out exactly as quick as possible how you could add the most value in what you're becoming an expert in. You're becoming an expert in just to figure out how you could add the most amount of value. So you learn as much as you possibly can, develop expertise, network your butt off, learn in how you could add the most amount of value, and take continual baby step action every single day, 1%. So learn, network, add value as much as possible, and figure out how you can do that, and take daily action by setting small attainable goals. It doesn't have to be massive action every single day. That's kind of unreasonable. As long as you just take small, consistent, persistent action steps towards that large, big, audacious goal. That's really the recipe to success. I mean, that's not even just real estate. That's business. As any new venture, I believe if you follow that framework, I mean, and you're going to learn along the way, there's going to be a lot of success in your future.
Maybe one last piece of wisdom that you want to share with people as they're moving towards financial freedom.
What I can say is, there's people that specialize in certain type of real estate, single families or multifamilies or commercial. I say buy any income producing asset if the numbers work. I buy any asset. It could be land, it could be a duplex, a single family, a quad, a triplex. It could be a multifamily apartment complex. It could be a mobile home park or a mobile home or notes. I have all that in my portfolio. The numbers work and it's producing income and it's an asset. So why not buy it? You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't just buy one category. I buy any asset that's producing income in the whole, in this business.
What is the one thing you would want to tell someone who's currently working towards financial freedom?
Oh man, I think, well, there's a couple of things. Maybe it's just not one thing, but I would say the biggest thing is get comfortable, know how to manage and assess the risk of leveraging your properties. Meaning, if you want to become financially free in real estate, you cannot do it paying cash unless you have such a high paying job, and then you don't need to be financially free because you just got a ton of cash coming in. So at some point, we need to get comfortable with responsible use of leverage, meaning understand loan programs, understand what it takes to finance real estate, understand how that interacts with potential rents, operating expenses, all that kind of stuff. I mean, all of that stuff comes later, I think, but I think if you're asking for one thing that someone's first starting out needs to focus and understand is the different financing options that are available, because with proper leverage, man, that's how you can create massive wealth. Now, you could also create massive problems and bankruptcy, foreclosure, short sales too, if you don't know what you're doing. But I mean, I think there's many things, but I think if there's one thing is know what loan programs work, and then that'll help guide you as far as how do you responsibly have a credit score? How do you file your taxes? All that other stuff. And then what properties can you afford? How do you structure the deal? But understanding debt, financing, especially in the residential commercial real estate world, that will be huge. Or seller finance. You don't even need to get a loan if you know how to do a seller finance or get the seller to carry a note, all those kind of stuff. So I guess I'd summarize it and say financing. Understand all the different methods of acquiring and buying and selling properties.
What's the one thing you'd tell someone who's maybe working towards financial freedom? They've started, but maybe they're at a W-2 job that they don't enjoy. What would you say?
So the first thing I would say is you have to get your first deal under your belt. You can have procrastination. You can procrastinate forever. You can overanalyze deals. You could get, you can get in the habit of just sitting at your computer screen and looking at all these deals. You just have to do one. And even if you don't make money on your first deal, even if you just break even, or even if you, lose a little money, just having that first deal under your belt will give you a lot of confidence. It will, it'll bring all of that analyzation into action. And for your second, third deal, it's all rinse and repeat. You just got to keep doing the same thing over and over, but you have to get that first deal under your belt. And I also wouldn't get caught up into, the number of doors you have. I think a lot of real estate investors get really obsessed with that number of how many doors do you have? Well, you know what? There's one short-term rental I have, that cash flows like $10,000 a month. So that's almost like having 100 doors that are cash flowing, $100 a month? Is that, is that right? Yeah. So that's like having 100 doors that cash flow $100 a month each. So don't get caught up into the big door thing. I know guys that own 200 doors and they're struggling to pay bills. Whereas, some guys that own 10 doors and they're doing really well. So that can also intimidate people. Like if you have 0 doors, 0 investment properties, and you're thinking in your head, like, hey, I need to get it to 500 doors to be financially free. Well, that number is going to intimidate you and that'll keep you from acting. So don't get caught up in those numbers.
What is the one thing you'd want to tell someone who's working towards financial freedom?
Man, it's kind of your standard answer. And I kind of just went off it, but analysis paralysis is real. And, I certainly had my own share of it in the beginning where I just kept digging in, kept reading the blogs, the forums, wondering how am I going to do this? But it literally just took me committing and taking that first step with that duplex. Like I said, I was absolutely terrified. I had no idea what I was getting into. But I mean, looking back on that first deal, that trajected me towards where I am today, right? I mean, for instance, that particular duplex is cash flowing me about $1,200 a month. After 4 years of being able to raise rents and kind of putting my expenses aside, that's a good amount of cash flow for your first deal. And if I would have been scared and just said, hey, I don't know if I can do this, I don't think I'd be in a position where I am today. So get out there, do your due diligence, but definitely take the step forward and take some action.
What's the one thing you would tell someone who's working towards financial freedom?
So, to that final point is find out what gives you energy. And so there's oftentimes things that we do that suck energy away from us and things that give us and fire us up and make us excited. And it's oftentimes the things that you do on the weekends or, after work or whatever. There's something that you do that you don't even get paid money for, but you're like, man, I love doing this. There's something around that translates to also what is your purpose or passion in life. If you can start understanding what that is, you can start designing a system that produces the results of what you want to do. Not everyone has to be a millionaire. Not everyone needs to be a millionaire or to be financially free. That might only be $1,000 a month. It might be, a very inconsequential. You can actually live like a monk and have no money. Maybe that's what you desire to have that. Doubtful most people in the world want that. But I go, if you can figure out what your purpose is, and oftentimes you're not going to discover that without taking action. You have to go do things. And sometimes you're going to do stuff and you're like, wow, I hate doing this. I thought I wanted to do this. And you'd be like, wow. So again, saying yes, creating action, going some way and picking some direction is going to help give you clarity on, man, I don't like this or I do like that. Also identify on those things that you've probably naturally always gravitated towards your entire life that give you energy, that fulfill you. and you look up and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe 6-8 hours have passed. That was amazing. Wow. And then if you can figure out what that is and those things, and then you can start building a system to leverage those, again, you've already won. It's not about, achieving a certain level of income. It's figuring out the thing that truly fires you up and doing that more and more.
Hey everyone, just a quick minute. This episode is brought to you by our show sponsor, EVA Solutions. EVA Solutions is a virtual staffing company that provides a hassle-free experience when it comes to finding the right virtual assistant. From sourcing, interviewing, qualifying, onboarding, to monitoring your VA, they have it all covered. They understand that your business is unique, and so are your virtual assistant needs. That's why they offer high-quality virtual assistants that are customized to fit your specific requirements and needs. They have a team of experienced and professional virtual assistants who are experts in a variety of skills in different industries, including customer service, administrative support, data entry, property management, social media management, and the list goes on. If you sign up using the link, you'll get a $200 off for full-time VA service for the first 6 months. So go to show notes, click on the link, and EVA Solutions has your back. If you're looking for a VA, if you're looking for an assistant, they will knock it out of the park for you because they do it for me and my businesses. The first flip that you made $9,800 on, that you felt like the richest man in the world. Yeah. What did you learn in that flip? And what did it do for you? Besides giving you $9,800 and making you feel like the richest man.
What did it do for me? I think it opened up my eyes that, because I was doing sales, like just commission based, but with the brokerage and everything, like they were smaller sums than, so that was the biggest check that I had ever received, just in like a lump sum, right? Yeah. So it opened up my eyes to see like, hey, like there's a lot of different ways where you can make a lot more money. To the other thing that it made me realize is I don't want to do all the work on my properties. I like doing a little bit, but I think I spent a total of 4.5 weeks every day doing, I don't want to say backbreaking work, but it was
construction.
Yeah, labor intensive.
Yeah.
So it opened my mind to say, if I can make more or even the same amount and not have to do any work on my other flips, that's the route that I want to take.
Yeah. What's one thing you'd want to tell someone who's working toward financial freedom and maybe they're stuck or they haven't gotten to that point yet?
I think there's going to be, I think a lot of people, there's plenty of reasons not to get in. Like, I think a lot of people get scared. And I think a big thing is like, what do you think? Like, I think there's plenty of reasons not to invest if you look for them. there's all kinds of things that can be like, ooh, that's just not quite the right fourplex, or ooh, that single family home sucks, or just go buy something, even if it sucks.
Yeah.
You know, like maybe your first deal is like a dumpster fire. You know what I mean? But it's like, some people are just like, what do you think? And like, what's the right rate? And like, as you know, like if somebody was like, what's the right amount of hard money rate to do a flip? It's like, well, it depends.
Yeah.
How long are we going to take on this thing?
Yeah.
Who's it for? Like, what are our points? What is this? What's that? Like, there's 1,000 different variables, right? So I think a lot of people are self-sabotaging in the fact that they're like they know the answer, but they'll just be like, well, what do you think? And I don't know, I just this and that. And it's like, well, you know, if you'll find out, you'll go buy a fourplex and be like, I hate this, I want to just syndicate. Or you'll be like, this is pretty cool, I can like cash flow off this thing. Like, but I feel like you just got to do something, right? Yeah. It's everybody talks about it, right? Like, get the car rolling and then try to steer it. But I think it's scary for sure if you're like kind of sitting outside, and you can definitely talk yourself out of it if you want to on any aspect.
What's the one thing you'd want to tell someone who's working towards financial freedom?
I would say
make sure you study, but don't get that analysis paralysis where you're just sitting and watching and waiting for so long that you miss your chance. Because there's going to be a lot of chances along the way. It's not just one property that's going to make or break your opportunity. It's just studying the market, making sure you feel comfortable in that deal, and having mentors and people you can reach out to and say, hey, I've done some research. This is what I'm thinking. Can you help me verify? I wish I would have listened and done that. I had some people that were wise investors that said, why aren't you buying right now? And, back in 2015, 2016, it was because I didn't have a dollar to my name. And I thought that because I didn't have a dollar to my name, I couldn't, invest in anything. So I had to rent. But I wish I would have known that there are alternative options to get yourself into a property. Because gosh, if I would have invested in 2015, right out of college, or even in college, find a place and rent it out to other roommates, goodness, my life could be very different, but I'm happy where it is now. And I'm excited for, what I'm doing with my investments now. But yeah, that's what I would do going backwards.
What's the one thing you'd tell someone who's working towards financial freedom?
Yeah. So I think in the beginning, the mindset I had was very much save, then buy, and save, then buy. And in the first 2 years, I, did an audit on kind of the last 7 years here. And, we were buying like 2 properties a year, right? 2 properties a year, 2 single families a year, things like that. And, I would just run out of money. Like, cool, I do it, run out of money, do it, run out of money, save up, run out of money again after you buy another property. And I was doing the math in my mind. I was like, man, this is going to take me forever to get there, right? So I was like, what? Like, I don't want to retire at like 60, right? That's no point of that, right? Like, I want to do this faster, right? So I think the leverage aspect was something that we changed our mind as well. Because in the very beginning, our actual strategy was we'll buy 2 properties a year, right? And then we'll have each cash flow from each property pay off 1 property, right? Like all the cash from all the properties will pay off 1. And then when that's done, then that's all cash. And then we'll pay off the second one, right? Now we have 2 paid off. We'll do all that cash flow for 3rd, and it kind of compounds from there. Yeah. And it was like a 10-year plan on that one. And it was, it was a decent plan, but it was going to take a long, long time. Right. And, luckily, we were in an environment where interest rates were going down and down and down. I remember, people talk about interest rates being high right now. I remember getting a flat 5.5% interest rate on a fourplex. And I don't even know what year it was, like 2017 or 2018. And I was pumped. I was like, sweet, that's awesome. And now it's back there. People are freaking out, whatever. But interest rates were going down. It was going down to 4, going down to 3, going down to 2. It was crazy. And it was like, dude, if I can just borrow all this money, it's basically free money, and leverage that free money just to buy more and more properties, let's just do that. Why would I pay off anything right now? So we kind of had that change as well. So that was one aspect. The other aspect was going bigger, right? Going bigger faster. I think it's so cliche. People say it all the time, but it's so true. I mean, do we still do single family homes? Yeah, we do. But I look back right now and like all my apartment complexes, even the ones we're doing right now, are way more chill and way less work. There's still work, but way less work than our single family homes. Just things that just always come up with single families that are just annoying as hell. So going bigger, faster. And then 3rd is the who, not how, right? Finding the people that complement your superpowers and also your weaknesses. I think I'm self-aware enough to know that I'm good at, and I love doing certain things. And I hate doing certain things. And it drives away energy. So, I define superpower as like something that 1, you're good at, and 2, gives you energy when you do it, right? And so the who, not how aspect is then more about, all right, how can I find people that love doing the things that I hate and drains energy, but that's their superpower and that gives them energy and they love doing that. And it's so crazy. You think like, oh no, like people would never love doing that because you hate it. But then you talk to more people, you're like, oh wow, you are actually the opposite of me. And I love that. The yin and yang right there. So, I think those are the 3 things in my mind that really helped us like really start to take off.
What's the one thing you'd want to tell somebody who's working towards financial freedom?
Well, start as early as you can. I'll give you 2 things. So start as early as you can. That's kind of a no-brainer. But I think I think you need to be willing to make some sacrifices to get there. And I'll just give you an example of a woman I met probably in her mid-20s. She got out of college, lived at home with her parents for 2 years. No one wants to do that unless you absolutely have to. And she didn't have to. She has a good job, but she saved up money for a 2-bedroom townhouse. Then you think, okay, great. She did it great. But no, she is renting out one of the rooms to someone that pays probably about 75% of her expenses. Again, she doesn't have to do this because she can pay for it with her job, but she's made that sacrifice. And now she's in a position where she told me probably in 6 or 9 months, she's going to go buy a second-hand townhouse, rent out the 2nd bedroom for this one. And then the new townhouse, she's not going to live by herself. She's going to rent out the 2nd bedroom too. And yeah, she really didn't have to do any 3 of those steps, but she's willing to make a sacrifice of something that's kind of an inconvenience that might not be seen as, well, you're not successful. You have a roommate. Yeah, my roommate pays all my bills, so I am successful. Like, she knows that. And I think she's leveraging that short-term sacrifice so that when she's, 10 years from now, when she's 35 or 40, if she keeps going on that path, I mean, she'll be done. And when she told me that, I just sat here and thought, man, I wish I would have known all this stuff when I was in my 20s, which, I turned out well, but, early 20s versus 50 is a different story. So
what's the one thing you'd want to tell someone who's working toward financial freedom? And, obviously we're always all working towards a higher level of more passive income and more lifestyle freedom, more time freedom, all of those things. But yeah, tell us a little bit, what's one thing you'd tell someone working towards that?
You have to keep that goal front and center constantly, because the noise and the distractions, this contradicts what I just said, that if you should be laser focused on something, then you're going to miss opportunities that are outside of that laser focus. But at the same time, I'm talking about that with the projects that you're going to work on and the people you might be willing to work with. I'm not talking about that with your goals. You really have to be laser focused on your goals, because I definitely got off track with that when I was scaling too fast and I was doing bigger and bigger deals. And I remember the last large deal that I was going to do as a lead sponsor. And I kept thinking, like, I don't want to do this deal. It was a good deal. I'd made commitments to some partners and we were moving down this track, but I kept thinking to myself, like, this is a 5 to 7 year ball and chain that I got to asset manage. And that kind of language should have been a red flag to me. I should have said, you know what? I'm happy to do this deal in a more minor role. I don't want to be in charge of this or that. I will help out more as a consultant. I will sign on the loan. Like, I should have been more of the key partner than a lead sponsor, because I knew that we were closing in on financial freedom and they were closing in on my husband's ability to quit his W-2 job. And he said something to me one time I will never forget, when I was asking him, when are you going to feel comfortable? When are you going to feel ready to quit your W-2? And not that he could just sit on a beach for the rest of his life, but do something more part-time, his own business, that kind of thing. And he said, when you're ready to really cut back on your business, because I'm not just going to trade my job out for your job. Because at the time I was working pretty much full time on this business and traveling a lot for conferences and things. He said, what's the point of me quitting? Because we're not going to be able to do any of the things we want to do or have that time freedom if you're working as much as you're working. And I realized at that point, that deal ended up falling through because we couldn't raise enough money for it. I mean, there were some other issues that we had with it, but that was the major one. When we backed out, we're like, we're just not going to be able to get this across the finish line. We weren't creative enough. I now know what I would have done differently. But I'm still glad that I didn't do the deal, because when you're calling something a ball and chain and when you have anxiety about doing it, that's not financial freedom. And I had to drastically pivot my business after that loss, because we lost our earnest money. I basically took all the responsibility for that earnest money. We had to pay legal bills, financial due diligence. And so just all the costs of looking into a deal of this size. I think it was 16 million, and we were doing like a $5.5–6 million raise. And it's expensive to go walk through, 250 units with the property manager. You got to pay them to do that. And so we lost all that cash. And I just took some time to kind of cry, kind of think, kind of reevaluate. What did I learn from this? I ended up selling both of those Arkansas properties plus the high-rise development that we did in downtown Salt Lake that same year that we had that loss. And so that loss actually helped to offset how much taxes, capital gains I had to pay on the buildings that we sold. And so financially, it ended up being fine. But emotionally, I really had to take a step back and say, if this goal is financial freedom and this goal is to be able to quit the W-2 and just have both of us working kind of part-time, managing our portfolio and maybe like a passion project, then that's not what I was doing. That's not where I was going. I was building a big syndication business, and I was talking about having to hire an executive assistant. I was talking about having to, with that many units, bringing property management, asset management in-house and running these businesses. And I just had to say, that's not financial freedom. That is not why I started this out. It was to have passive income, spend more time with my family, and spend more time living in a more relaxed lifestyle. And it was exactly the opposite of the direction I was going. So I cut way back and I shifted over to just raising capital in an investing club model, where I just partner up with other entrepreneurs like me who are looking to, maybe they're looking to scale down like me, or maybe they're beginners looking to scale up. But we're both at the same place, regardless of which direction we're moving. We're both crossing over in that we can't raise $1 million or $2 million by ourselves. We can't go do a $30 million deal by ourselves, but we can group up and bring in maybe $1 million to somebody else's deal, and then use that pool to negotiate better terms, to negotiate a piece of the management. So that's the model that I switched over to. It's a lot less work. I have committees that we volunteer, underwriting committee, legal review committee, and everybody's contributing according to their own abilities, whether or not they have any experience in real estate or not. But we have fund managers in there. We have experienced operators who are using us to do filler deals. Maybe they only have 200 grand they need a place and they don't have a deal for it, so they'll jump in and do a deal with us. And so it's a crossroads of a lot of different people just looking to do deals in a smaller way, either because they're beginners or they need a filler, or because they're like me and wanting to scale back. So having that laser focus on that goal of why we're doing this in the first place, when you get off track, that goal will help to remind you and get you back on track. And it might be a pivot from where you're going, or it might just be a reminder that what you're doing is correct.
What's the one thing you'd tell someone who's working towards financial freedom?
The one thing I tell someone that's working towards financial freedom. Oh, no, I do know what I would say. I would say have a powerful enough vision to pull you towards something instead of running away from something.
Oh,
If you're running away from your job just because you hate your job and you're like, screw you, man, I hate the man, like I hate my job, I can't wait to get out of this thing, but you have no idea, like you have no why pulling you, it's going to take you 10 times as long, because I've already done that. I've already quit my job, went over to another job, quit that job, went back to my original job. I've already played that game. I've danced that dance. It doesn't work. So the only way that you can do this with grace, essentially too, is to just be able to have such a strong vision of what you want your life to look like that it pulls you. And then you can just gracefully exit your job without all that animosity and FU in your system, because that just messes things up, man.
what's one thing you would want to tell someone who's working towards financial freedom?
I would say it's a process. It's not an overnight thing, and it's not a get rich quick thing. So, you know, when you shift your mindset into a lifestyle and you're making better decisions, because like the things, time's going to go by either way. So in 10 years is going to be here. And what we do, like looking back in 10 years from now, what we do now is going to dictate and shape what that 10 years looks like. The time's going by either way. So don't get caught up in the instant gratification, but also don't get caught up in the comparing the Instagram life that everyone shows their reel on. You know, you have to be disciplined and understand that it's a process. So like you need to be disciplined in making those the right decisions regularly over time to where you're going to be there, you know, because like the life that you and I are living today is a direct result of like the shit that Jordy 3 years ago and 5 years ago committed to himself then. Same thing with me. So for me, like real estate's what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing. So, you know, it's hard and you're going to have a lot of problems and shit come up and you're going to want to quit and you're going to wonder why you're doing this. And like, you're going to like I cry of frustration of tears, but plan B is reinforcing plan A. When you take quitting off the table and you commit to yourself for real, like I want to be financially independent, I'm going to do it through real estate or whatever your vehicle is. And you commit to it and you understand it's going to be a process and it's going to take time. That would be my answer to that.
What is one thing you would want to tell someone who's working towards financial freedom?
Oh, I actually love that question that you ask each guest that. My one thing, narrowing it down, that is so hard. I'm just gonna,
I'm
just gonna say what first comes out.
Since you're you can do more than one.
I know, right? Thank you, dear. I'm gonna say it, but feel free to look us up and you can, we can connect and I can rant a lot longer because I am a talker. Jordy loves that about me. Sometimes he doesn't. Okay, so the one thing that I would tell someone who is working towards financial freedom is just keep going. I know that sounds so cliche, but really just keep going. Like, don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on the journey. I can't just say one. Don't compare. That's really what that's actually should be what it is. Don't compare your starting point to where someone else started. We have lots of friends who they started at 19. I mean, we've heard podcasts and you've had people on your show that have started so young and they're further ahead than us. And I love that. Take that and use it as motivation. Don't use it as a detriment or a crutch or an excuse of why you can't get started in this. Focus on your journey and don't get distracted with what everyone else is doing, and don't limit yourself because of where you're starting.
Yeah, that's good.
I mean, what's the one thing you'd tell someone currently who's working towards financial freedom?
If they're just at the beginning, like if they're just starting, the first thing I'd say is just make sure you cut down on your personal expenses. So it's twice as easy to be financially free if you spend 40 grand than if you do 80 per year. And so we live on $42,000 to $44,000 a year has been our sort of average family budget. I think we eat fairly well and live in a fairly nice place. So that's the first thing I do. And the second is it's not linear growth for sure. So when we bought our rentals, it wasn't like buy one. Like I hear this a lot. Like I'm going to buy 10 rentals in the next 10 years. No, you're not. Like if you're going to buy 10 rentals in 10 years, you're going to buy one this year, one at year 5, 2 in year 6, 3 in year 7, and another 3 in year 8, right? That's kind of how the math works. And so when we look at mine, we went from $100,000 of real estate and we literally doubled. And now we're approaching $10 million in rentals, apartment complexes, and we're in some syndications that cash flow. We've got oil investments. It's very exciting, but and every year seems to be twice as fast as the year before, which is extremely exciting. So don't get depressed when like I look backwards and I'd be like, man, like how do I get from rental 1 to rental 2? Like I just spent my $32,000 on my down payment. I got nothing left. And it goes fast. It's like the kids growing up, right? The second one is going to come half as fast, or it's going to come twice as fast as your first one. And so sort of focusing on overall growth and don't thinking in a linear perspective is important. And I'd say anywhere you are, the important thing is, I think, mentality. So I hear this a lot, like I struggled a lot. Like we asked ourselves, what do we want to do in 10 years in the flip world? And I just hired my employee, Matt. And he's like, what do you see your company like in 3 years? I go, man, I don't even know if we're going to be flipping houses. And he's like, what? Like he wants stability, right? But I'm realizing the more and more I've been an investor, the more I've realized it's important to pivot and put yourself in front of the money because it's easier. And so when you're investing, when you're getting started off, if you're, a few years in the road or you're starting today, the important thing is being prepared to pick up what you've done and change. Because if you keep tried and true, or not tried and true, if you never pivot, it can be very, very hard. If interest rates change, if the government has eviction moratoriums, if COVID causes commercial, industry to drop, or interest rates are at 12 instead of 4.5 or 5.5, we're going to have to change our business. And I think that's something I didn't really realize as much. Sure, I don't really realize it, but as much a few years ago as I do today, is it's really important to be prepared to move assets to better fit where your lifestyle and your finances are.
What's one thing you would want to tell someone who's working towards financial freedom?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, I would just say you have to start somewhere, and I would say there's different styles. There's so many different styles to financial freedom. And, step number one is defining that, so whether that's 5,000 a month, 10,000 a month, 20,000 a month, first of all, you have to know what you're shooting for. So try to define it for yourself. So whether that's quitting your job or keeping your job, everybody has their own style. And then number two is just to find the people that are doing what you want to do and just, get close to them, buy their course if they have a course, buy their mentorship if they have a mentorship program, whatever it is, to get close to them. Because some people love Grant Cardone and the 10X, and they go hard with him. I don't personally vibe with him. I think he's a fantastic guy. He's very smart, but I just don't enjoy his stuff as much as I do other people's. And so whether that's Pace Morby or Brandon Turner or whatever these names are that are out there, just, because there's the, what's it called? The financial minimalist, the Mr. Money Mustache, right? And so some people think financial freedom is just lowering your expenses as much as possible and trying to scrape by. Some people, it's focused on growth and, growing your revenue as high as possible, but still having a fun lifestyle and doing that. So there's different versions and different ways to get the same destination. Usually the principles boil down to the same. It's usually involving real estate because that's the fastest way to build wealth. So it's going to involve real estate. It's going to involve tax planning and cost segregation and depreciation. And it's going to involve usually either a side hustle and or a side business that generates more revenue than your current job. And so the principles will all boil down to the same, but figure out who's doing what you want to do and who you vibe with, and then connect with them.
What is one thing you would want to tell someone who's working towards financial freedom?
Again, the pick the big rocks first, then go for the small rocks and sand. What is the biggest rock in your financial life? I believe it's whoever is controlling the environment in which your money lives. The environment, it's like the fish in my aquarium across the house there. If I mess with that environment, if I raise the temperature, fish is dead. So who is controlling the environment in which your money lives? Is it a bank or is it you?
For someone that's just starting on their journey to financial freedom, or they're just learning about, hey, maybe you don't have to work, 80 hours a week as an orthopedic surgeon for the next 40 years to be able to have some sort of retirement. What advice would you give that person?
Well, several pieces of advice. Number one, I think something that really helped us was having a good accountant. And I say that specifically because of one decision that he made for us, we made the decision, but he advised us, was starting our own property management company, LLC. And running all of our expenses through that, purchasing homes through that. That was good. And you don't know what you don't know, right? So you need to surround yourself with people who know more than you. And so having a good team is one of those things. We have a great realtor who's very good at finding deals, and she knows what we're looking for. And so communication between yourself and a realtor, and good communication, not just communication, but letting them know exactly what it is you're looking for. They can help separate the wheat from the chaff. And so it really streamlines the whole process. And then contractors, over the last 6-7 years, we've developed sort of a network of contractors that we like to use, and they will help us out when we need. Work is really hard to find in the Valley. There's so much growth here, and most people are just slammed. But if you have developed these relationships, foster them, nurtured them, they will tend to make openings for you. So those are a couple things. Another thing for me is I grew up blue collar. I had a hard work ethic. I was always trying to outwork everybody. I'm not saying you have to do this, but I do think it's good to be willing to. It's a house, right? It's not a car that you wax and polish on the weekends. It's a house, and it takes love, and it takes care, and it takes elbow grease and sweat and blood and tears and all this stuff. So for me, I've always been one of these people who's very good at maintaining things, whether it's my bike or my car or my house, whatever. Being willing to do some of the work yourself, sweat equity goes a very long way. And I spent all day yesterday and most of today until the time of this podcast working on our place that we just sold. And I think that's one of the real reasons why on all of our properties, not just this one, we've done so well, because we have just really worked to maintain these properties, make them look valuable to people. You know, a lot of real estate is first impressions, right? It's what people see from the curb. There's location, right? There's all these other factors. But if someone shows up to maybe a location they're not that excited about, but they see the work you put into it and the maintenance you've done and how you've improved the property, I think that really speaks loudly. And so it's just, you know, it's kind of a source of pride. And there are times where I wish I wasn't so prideful and I didn't have to do so much work because of it. But, you know, right here and now, we just closed on a property that we sold last Friday. We're closing on another one next month that we're selling. And the value that we generated from being able to just roll up our sleeves and get to work has been very significant.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot to be said for that because, you know, so many people, they want the appreciation or they want the gains or whatever without having to do the work. Right. And that could be in any area of our life, right? Like people want a magic pill to lose weight instead of just correcting their, what they're consuming. Right.
Yeah.
Or, you know, they want to be rich without having to figure out how to live within their means and invest the difference or whatever that may be. And so I think that's phenomenal advice and certainly something I probably needed to hear just as we're growing and, you know, adding kids in and just have everything going on. A lot of the times it's easy just to go, oh, well, I could just hire somebody for that. But there definitely is some value in doing some work yourself.
Yeah, well, there's also value in having a team in place like I know you do and being able to hire things out. You know, to say it again, you don't know what you don't know. And if you're trying to tackle a plumbing problem that's over your head, you might create a real mess, right? So there are certainly times where I'm willing to farm something out to somebody, but I think just overall, you know, like I said, this is a big investment. Any piece of real estate you buy is a big piece of investment. If you can put your hands on it and you can, you know, get to know the property, the house, the structure, the systems, you know, HVAC, plumbing, electrical, all this stuff, and just do a little bit of maintenance, I think it really goes a long way. That's my personal thing. There's a lot of people who don't do that, who don't want anything to do with it. I'm not saying it's the only way. A lot of people just want to hire someone to do all this stuff. I've always had this thought pattern that if you want something done right, do it yourself. Nobody cares as much about my house as I do. And especially that's true in a place or, you know, a time where everyone's busy and they don't really have the time to devote to things. So, you know, again, you got to do what's right for you. You got to work within your own skill set. These are things that have worked for me and for us. I don't recommend them to everybody. And if someone else has, you know, a great contractor and they don't want to do anything, then so be it. But part of that too, I think, which has been really important, which I like to talk about, is we've involved our kids. Okay, so my kids know how to change doorknobs. They know how to mow the lawn. They know how to winterize the sprinkler system. They know how to climb up in the attic and add insulation and, you know, turn off the breakers to do work on the electrical system. And we're looking right now at helping our kids, both of our boys, or the two of them together, I should say, to purchase a house, just an inexpensive house that will, you know, basically hopefully appreciate like we've seen, you know, in our past purchases. They're going to be the ones who are maintaining it. They're going to be working on it. They're going to be taking care of it. They're going to be building this sweat equity. And I think that's a really important lesson. You know, our kids have been involved for the last, they're 18 and 15 now, for the last 7 years with this property we just sold, doing all kinds of maintenance and work and chores there. And we're gonna cut them in as a result of that. You know, they've earned it. They've put in a lot of sweat equity on that property, and we want them to learn this lesson right now, that, you know, these things, they have merit, they have value down the road.
What is one thing you would tell someone who's working towards financial freedom?
Oh, be patient. You know, we talked about this a little bit at the mastermind group. You know, surround yourself with people who are doing it or have done it, because their belief will inspire you, right? We can get confidence. We can borrow confidence. If we see somebody else has done it and they're confident, then we can borrow their confidence in us making decisions. So surround yourself by good people. You know, get a coach if that's in the cards for you. have mentors around you, and then just be patient with the journey. I remember going through, maybe the first 5 or 10 years, I remember thinking, man, this is so slow. This is like the slowest way to get wealthy ever. I wonder if it's ever going to happen. And then, looking back 22 years, I was like, that happened so fast. That was so fast. It just seemed like yesterday those rents were $300 a month and now they're $1,500. So, surround yourself with the right people, go to events, get a coach if you need help that way. And which, by the way, I'm coached by several coaches. And be patient with that journey, because there will be a moment, if you stay in the property long enough, that you turn back and you're going to go, oh my gosh, that was a miracle. That was a freaking miracle. But you gotta be in the property long enough to get to the miracle moment.
What would you tell somebody who is maybe just getting started on their journey to financial freedom? They just found out that, like you said, there's a different way than, working for the next 40 years to maybe be healthy enough to enjoy life.
Yeah. I was having a conversation with somebody at a meetup. And he's like, man, I got like $65,000 and I don't know if I should buy a house to live in or if I should try to invest it or whatever. Right. And so I'll kind of speak to a person who has that situation. Like they've saved up some money and they're trying to figure out like, shoot, which way do I go? Especially if they're listening to this. And what I told him is there's a story on, and maybe, I don't know if you've heard this one, where like the way that they used to catch monkeys. The way they used to catch monkeys was they had a jar, they would attach a jar to a rope and they'd put a banana in the jar. And the monkey would go and put his hand into the jar, grab the banana, but he could never take his hand out because the banana, the jar wasn't big enough to allow for the banana to come back. So the monkey would never let go of the banana. So that's how they would get caught. And so I guess what I'm saying is, like, when you have your $60,000 or $65,000, or you have your job, or you have whatever comfort level you're currently in, ask yourself, is that the banana in the jar that's keeping you where you are? What do you have to let go of so you can actually take off and be more free and start to build a life of freedom? So that's kind of what I'd recommend. It's just first look at what is the banana in your life, and look at what you might need to start letting go of, whether it's your Netflix and chills, or it's your weekend drinking with the boys. If it is the $65,000, like, what do you need to let go of that's going to allow you to free up your time so you can start to build passive income and live the life, on your terms? I'd probably say that's where you start.
What would you say to somebody who has been, at their career, they've been doing well, they get paid well, and they'd be like, maybe they're 6s across the board on the soul sucking audit. But they just don't know how to let go of that identity of whatever they're doing, because
that's the hardest part. Actually, you're making it sound like that's like an obscure thing that maybe is part of Jordy almost. I feel like it's a personal question, like, but that's actually the hardest thing. Tim and I we did this thing for Bigger Pockets, and we, there was like 2,000 books that were pre-sold. And we said, if you pre-sell, you get into like a group coaching call with Tim and I. The Bigger Pockets picked 10 winners out of 2,000. And so we've been meeting with those 10 winners on this group coaching call. And that is the number one thing we're learning just recently, is the identity is like in the way so much. Like in this call, there's only 10 winners, but we have a doctor, we have a highly paid nurse, we have an engineer, we have a lawyer, like we have some really big identities. Like, you sit next to them on the plane, what do you do? I'm a personal injury lawyer. I'm a anesthesiologist or whatever. Like, that's a huge identity. And I think that the funny part is Tim and I have always struggled with identity. I think, like, I guess at some level, like, are you happy saying that's your identity? I get most of the people on this call would probably think, like the lawyer would probably think, yeah, I'm a lawyer, but I don't know why I got into law. My identity was real estate. I don't know why I got into real estate, right? I never liked like oh, this is a great kitchen or this is a great bathroom. I just like the money and the commissions and the ability to work for myself and not have a boss.
Yeah.
It was more of a means to an end, I think.
Okay.
So yeah, to answer your question, how do you get over that identity? You just got to figure that that's all it is an identity. It's all in your head. You're the only one with that identity. There's certainly a million doctors that have quit and become real estate investors or something completely different. Like the doctor in our group, this is what I said to him. I said, do you think there are any other doctors who have created an identity as big as yours or bigger of being a doctor that have quit and gone on to do something else? And he said, sure. Like, of course, I'm sure there's thousands and thousands of them, right? He might not know any of them, but he could probably find some. We've got, a couple in our, in GoBundance. There's, Tom Burns from GoBundance wrote a book, Why Doctors Don't Get Rich. He's got a whole following now of doctors that, want to quit. But anyways, my point is you're not alone, even though you probably feel that you're alone. Like he probably had anxiety thinking he's the first doctor ever in American history to quit to go do something that he likes better. But this I'm sure that I guarantee you there's tons of them.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of The Financially Free Investor. If you found value in this episode or know someone who would find value in this information, please share with them, subscribe, and send us a review.